Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the Mona School of Business and Management. I'm your chairperson for the afternoon. I don't have to be gender specific, I'm the chairman. Making no apologies. I'm the chairman for the afternoon's function. Who didn't think I was a man? Well, I'm trying to grow the beard very hard. But I'm saying welcome. I can't tell you the number of the fora here that we have had, but it's wonderful to have people interested in the construction industry here this afternoon. And I'm just going to introduce those who will be participating in this afternoon's delivery of some wise ideas and answer questions later on. Mona School of Business has had a practice of having fora in order to let ideas contend. That's the purpose that we feel a university should do. We have with us this afternoon Dr. William Lawrence, who is Strategic Management and Business Renewal in charge of our Professional Services Unit here at the Mona School of Business and Management, providing management consultancy and executive education for companies in the Caribbean, and particularly in quite a number of areas of industry. He's the author of a very popular book, Business Renewal and Performance in Jamaica, which I believe is a must-read for everybody who is going into business and at some time will be required to renew that business, and I think he has some very good recipes. We have Dr. Cecil White, who is with us, is a process excellence professional with over 25 years leadership experience in the public and private sectors. He's currently an associate lecturer at the Mona School of Business and Management. He's a member of the board of directors of the Project Management Institute, PMI, and a global association for the project management profession. We have Carvel Stewart, OD, National Awards, a past president of the Master Builders and engineer by profession. He has worked with the doyen of all construction companies in the Carvel, am I permitted to say the ancient days of Jamaica, notably Caribbean Construction Limited, where a number of our finest engineers have wet their feet in the profession. Was a president of the Incorporated Master Builders Association, and at present he's the managing director of Crossings Construction Limited. We have Paul Aiken, Dr. Paul Aiken, who is the head of the School of Engineering here at the Mona campus, and he was a PhD and MSc in electrical engineering from Columbia University in New York, and several other degrees. Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Science and Technology. And he is the founder of Mona Tech Engineering, who are doing a lot of work in terms of bringing the science of engineering into the medical maintenance and professional upkeep of a lot of the stuff that I'm very happy for Paul over in my other hat at the hospital. So, but he's one of our own. Waiting on, I think Mr. Dave Hilton will be coming. He's the PR manager of China Sinopharm International. He has been a senior manager at Housing Agency of Jamaica and the general manager of Barnett Limited. He is the public relations manager of Sinopharm. And of course, we have Mr. Joseph, who is the commercial manager of China Sinopharm International Corporation. He has had experience with that corporation in India, Sinopharm India, where he was the product manager, and Sinopharm Pan-Caribbean Limited, where he is the commercial manager. I am going to ask our acting executive director, Dr. Lila Rowe, to just bring the official welcome on behalf of the Mona School of Business and Management. Oh, no, sorry. Upstage again, Lila. Dr. Lawrence Nicholson is to bring, oh, that's why we have the jacket and everything today. Lovely. Dr. Nick, over to you. You are to bring them the official welcome. I was just playing night watchman.
Good evening, everyone. I, first of all, need to really apologize. I thought that I knew the traffic, but because I'm not one to navigate that route in a regular way, and so therefore I did not call on those who are more adept in construction to direct me in the area that I ought to have traveled. But notwithstanding, I need to apologize. But I want, on behalf of Mona School of Business and Management, to welcome you to our space. Certainly the executive director acting would have loved to have been here. That is Mr. Williams. He asked me to deputize, but the welcome is as warm, and I'm not talking about the temperature, but in Mona School of Business and Management, we believe that when you come in our space, we should welcome you. But we also understand that when you come to add value, because we do not claim that we know everything. In fact, we claim that we know very little. And with your input, we are empowered and emboldened to proclaim that we know. And so without you, we are nothing. Without you, we say that we are vacuous. And so we welcome you to add your voice to the area of your expertise. I've seen persons here that I could not even dare to use my name in the same sentence when it comes to construction. In fact, the only thing I know about construction is spell the word, and if I don't concentrate, I might get it incorrect. And so I look forward to you speaking on construction and see how we can partner with you as a business school, because we also recognize that in as much as we need you, we suspect that you need us. So again, welcome, and if you need water, we can show you where the tap is, right? But I suspect you'll be getting bottled water. And so enjoy the stay at Mona School of Business Management. When you're through, walk around and make sure that you make a commitment to sponsor somebody to study at Mona School of Business Management. Your investment was well spent. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholson. Our program this afternoon is very, very simple. Our presenters will bring their own perspective on construction in a period of about 12 minutes with each presentation. I will be keeping an eye on them for the time. I have a seat in the front row. And they will go in the order, and I will not reintroduce them. We will have a joint presentation by Dr. William Lawrence and Dr. Cecil White, followed by Mr. Carvel Stewart, Dr. Paul Aiken, and Mr. Dave Hilton, and Mr. Joseph Fan will wrap things up. Following that, we will have what I hope will be a very vibrant discussion period. As we are televising this for our own records here at UWI and perhaps for UETV, I would ask that when you're asking the questions, we're provided a microphone. I will recognize you at the appropriate time, and all the questions will come after all presenters have completed their presentation, and I will return again to this podium. So please help me welcome our first presenters, Dr. William Lawrence and Dr. Cecil White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am Cecil White, and myself and my colleague, Dr. Lawrence, will be making this presentation. At the Mona School of Business, we believe that the private sector is the engine of growth. And among the private sector, the construction industry has a key role to play. Now, it has long been determined that the infrastructural needs of Jamaica is not keeping abreast with its desire to grow. And therefore, we decided to take a look at the construction industry to see to what extent they can play that role. Back in April, we conducted a study, and we're pleased to share the results of that study, focusing on the construction industry. And the title of the study, Construction, a Driver for Economic Growth. So we want to share with you the results of yes. If you take a look at this graph, showing that over the past several decades, in spite of the fact that there has been a dramatic decline in interest rates, what you will see is that Jamaica's growth, in terms of GDP, has been lagging the world average GDP growth. This in spite of this precipitous decline in interest rates. So it suggests that something else, there are other confounding factors. It's not just the availability of lower funds. So we also took a look at the trends you can see in that industry. And you can see that, again, there has been declines in employment over the past several years, as well as a decline in the employment from the construction industry. So that sector has been underperforming for several years. Showing here the fall as a percentage of GDP. Also, you will notice in the bottom quadrant the results from the annual reports from the PIOJ Economic Survey, showing that there has been a dramatic decline in the number of housing starts over the past several years. From this high in 2002 of over 9,000 down to just around 1,500 in 2015. So against this backdrop, we conducted that survey. We wanted to find out what were some of the factors associated with this decline and what were some of the things that we thought could improve or reverse that trend. So we're going to share with you now the results of the survey that we conducted. You will see from this that the managers in the construction industry cite as a number one constraint delays in the public sector, the difficulty of doing business with government. Also, a huge issue was government's procurement policy. They also cited the cost of financing and advised us that the debt burden was a serious issue facing them. High cost of materials, the cost of skilled labor, quality of work, high crime and corruption ranked high on the list. And this one includes, they tell us, the cost of providing security on construction projects. Taxation is also an issue. And again, not only the cost of financing, but also access to financing was an issue. So these are the factors that they cite as factors impeding the growth of the construction industry. So in the same breath, we asked them, what are the things that they thought would improve their chances of success as an industry? And they cite these. If they can get assistance in making changes in government's construction policy, that would be the number one driver, they feel, the number one action that could stimulate growth in that industry. Also, they cited the need for more public-private partnerships, particularly as those relates to large government contracts, legacy-type projects. They also cite, as you may see here, training, risk management, project management, training in general, as some of the things that they believe, and also as well better estimate of costs. So we could typically say that this is project management, construction management related training that they believe would be key in helping them to grow that industry. I'm going to ask my colleague, William, now to come and dive a little deeper into this.
Thanks, Cecil. Good evening, everyone. As Cecil has indicated, the survey we did highlighted the current situation and also clearly indicated what the firms felt were some workable solutions. But we went deeper. We asked how are the local construction firms to execute these solutions, starting with what everyone is calling public-private partnerships. And we compared what we saw with global best practices from detailed review of the international literature. And what we found is that it is one thing to say that the construction firms locally must pursue these large government projects in partnership. It's quite a different thing to get it done. There are two major impediments which the government will have to take the role in correcting. One, if you look at the nature of these projects, take two of the most cited, the Sangster International Airport and Highway 2000. The fact is that these projects require highly specialized expertise and construction firms with very deep pockets. What that does, it eliminates most, if not all, of the local players. So we are suggesting to the government that when you look at procurement policy, build into those policies equal partnership between the foreign firms that are contracted and the local players. Equal, not merely subcontracting, because you can't transfer expertise merely by offering a small piece of the pie. And when we look globally, other countries are doing it. If you want to get your business, you must be equal partners with a local player, such that when they leave, expertise is transferred. We also looked at the recommendation pertaining to risk. The construction firms felt that they needed to do a better job in managing risk. The fact is that housing development projects, as Cecil has pointed out, has taken a hit. But if you look at the trend in mortgages, that's on the recovery. Now, this chart might not be very clear, but I can tell you that the recovery is somewhat different from what happened before the decline. Before the decline in the number of mortgages, the NHT granted most of the mortgages in the sector. Now, in the recovery period, what we're seeing are non-NHT mortgages outstripping NHT mortgages. And that's because the profile of the construction projects are changing. And what we have found is that each construction firm needs to develop its own roadmap in terms of what projects to pursue and how. And there are well-established tools to do it. So we're saying to every construction firm, it's not one size fits all. Develop your own roadmap. Pick your shots carefully in terms of which projects you're going to undertake. Collaborate if you must, but be very careful. The other issue pertains to cost. Virtually all construction firms are concerned with cost reduction. And I want to invite back Cecil to tell you our discussions on that.
Right. As William is saying, it's not just, the solution lies not just in stimulating and increasing your revenues. You got to be focused on, with a clinical focus on productivity. And so cost reduction looms large in this discussion. And one of the things we're seeing as we look around the world is that in developing countries, US, Europe, Far East, China, construction companies are moving towards what we call lean construction. Now, lean construction, in fact, lean in general, is more a philosophy, a mindset, more so than a methodology. And in lean construction, what they have been, I'm going to show you a video shortly, how it is being used around the world. But it focuses, it allows construction companies to focus on cost reduction methods, lowering their costs, improving the flow of materials on site, getting the right materials in the right quantities, in the right place, at the right time. That sort of thinking. Very, very inexpensive to implement these practices. Two things I want you to take away from this. It is inexpensive to implement. You notice they were using paper reports. So the use of iPads and more advanced technologies is optional, not necessary. It's more thinking. It's more what you do. It's about getting the right materials in the right quantities, to the right place, the right time. So I'm going to bring my colleague William back now to wrap up.
So certainly cost reduction is big on the agenda, and lean construction is practiced worldwide. The survey, as Cecil pointed out, also showed the grave concerns that many construction companies have in terms of debt burden, taxation, and just the cost of financing. And when we looked at what's available, we are strongly suggesting from the research that many times government policy doesn't come quite in the way you want. But you've got to find a way to exploit or to leverage the policies that exist. And one such policy is the junior market of the Jamaica Stock Exchange. The fact is that a company can get up to $500 million on the stock exchange with 5 years of full income tax waiver. And that's quite transformative. When we looked at global best practice, we found that the better construction firms worldwide, irrespective of size, have more than 50% of their assets in the form of equity, more than 50%. So clearly, if you're running with heavy debt burden, as we do here, 70, 80% of your assets being debt, you are not on global best practice. And if to boot, you can get 5 years income tax waiver, why not? I'm sure you're aware that the vast majority of firms on the junior market had their shares oversubscribed on day one. That's nothing to sneeze at. You know, when we did this presentation at the round table, a very experienced professional in the sector, Mr. Don Mullins, presented the stark fact that unfortunately the country has lost some of its very best construction firms over the past 4 decades. Firms that were doing well, but because of financial hardship, went out of business. The fact is that since 2014, we now have what is called the Insolvency Act. And I must tell you that the government is still shocked that companies have shunned the Insolvency Act. A few individuals have taken up the mantle, But no company, and certainly no construction company in distress, have attempted to avail themselves of the protection that you can get from creditors if you are on hard times. Some might say, well, there's a stigma of bankruptcy. But we know in business that when you have your last dollar sunk in a commercial enterprise, you'll do whatever you can to save the day. And I'm urging all construction firms to keep the Insolvency Act in their back pocket in case you have to negotiate. We all know how brutal creditors can be. So in summary, what we're saying in summary, 4 basic things. 1, public-private partnerships will not happen unless the government takes the lead with its policy to ensure that construction firms are equal partners on these projects, not merely subcontractors. 2, to generate revenues, we're saying that construction firms must do spear fishing, not nest fishing. Pick your shots carefully and plan accordingly. 3, use simple lean practices to squeeze cost and waste out of your operations. And last but not least, leverage the junior market and the Insolvency Act to take care of taxation, debt burden, and the cost of capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Recognizing some of my colleagues here, good to see you. Good evening to my daughter, Dr. Siren Stewart, from your School of Education department. I may sound a little bit pedantic, having had that excellent exposition that you just had, but I was told that we were looking at the role of construction in development and economic growth. So I just wanted to outline some facts about construction. Construction produces infrastructure works such as roads, bridges, utility plants, ports, etc. These tend to enable free movement of people, goods, services. They provide water supplies, waste treatment, and power generation and other utility type services. Construction also produces administrative and social facilities such as schools, public offices, libraries, hospitals, police stations, military installations, and other civic buildings. These enable improved living standards, individual personal development, and health services and security. Finally, construction produces structures that facilitate capital production. These include factories, hotels, commercial offices, retail outlets, thereby producing goods and services which supply the entire economy. In construction, we depend on our supplies of materials and equipment. We also depend on a stable and skilled labor market. All of our materials are obtained either locally or through importation. Importation also is involved in all items of construction equipment, both mechanical and manual. So far, we haven't produced many of the items that we need. Some people used to produce wheelbarrows and minor items like that, but we depend on importation for a lot of those. This has meant that importation comprises a large and significant portion of our local construction cost. Financial services are required for contractors, and these include funding, and insurances and bonds, and these could comprise significant portions of the construction cost. All of these represent a significant input in the business of construction and the enabling of the process. Everything that I have described above essentially sets out the role of construction in economic development. I therefore want to explore the current realities in our industry and propose later on some steps towards rebuilding this industry, putting Jamaican firms at its forefront. First, it should be reiterated that construction has in the past contributed up to 9%, William, of GDP. Use this one. Whoops, maybe this might help. Eh? This used to mean that we would have engaged up to 90,000 and more workers in the industry. You have found, both William and Cecil, that this has reduced significantly. Again, you posited it against the drop in interest rates, which is indicative of the fall in the industry. There are some other factors that contribute to it, and I'll come to those later. I'm reminded that almost all construction projects here in Jamaica, prior to the mid to late 90s, were undertaken by local firms. There were foreign companies engaged almost exclusively by government and also on major development projects in the bauxite industry, the cement plant. Major ones like that would engage foreign companies, but in the main, all the buildings and roads, bridges, etc., were undertaken by Jamaican construction companies. Where, for instance, there were in the past foreign construction companies, the labor input was almost 100% Jamaican as well. This has now been significantly eroded, and again, we'll speak to that. In order to fulfill construction's role in development, contractors are required. That's just a straight statement of fact. Contractors are required to fulfill construction's role in development. For me, that would translate, of course, into local contractors primarily. And those are the people that I defend and I'm for. Of course, the view is no longer universally shared, that view that local contractors are needed for the development locally. And as you can see recently, our government primarily and first of all, and now the private sector, including Jimmy's, has bought into foreign importation of foreign contractors. And I chided Jimmy a little bit earlier for buying Chinese while encouraging us to buy Jamaican. And we'll take that conversation further on. But seriously, local contractors will contribute more to the economy as opposed to GDP now. We're separating the two. Local contractors contribute more to the economy than foreign contractors. A major portion of the cost is unavoidable, and that's the importation cost of materials and equipment. These costs vary depending on the nature of the development. Housing will have higher import content than roads and bridges. High equipment content in factories, utility plants, and high-rise buildings will also result in greater importation costs into those developments. This is now compounded by the unnecessary importation of foreign contractors, and it is an element of importation. A CDB report in the 1990s established that when local contractors are engaged, amounts in excess of 50% of the contract sum are retained in the economy. The wages to workers, when there are local contractors working, amount to about 25% of the cost of construction. Local engineers and management staff add a further 3 to 5%. the cost of financials, the ones I mentioned earlier, the funding, the cost of using funds, the insurances on bonds will amount to somewhere about another 5%. Local materials may add up to a 10%, depending on the nature of the projects. Overheads and profit, maybe another 15%. The total there of what I've outlined is about 58%. Conversely, the study concluded that when foreign companies are employed, only 30% is retained in the economy. That has been further exacerbated by having the Chinese contractors doing work here, and I'll outline why. Local purchases of goods and services from domestic suppliers, who in turn employ Jamaican workers in their businesses, site canteens, kitchens, set up by enterprising Jamaican women who supply meals to workers, truckers and other haulage contractors supply and deliver materials, while equipment rental companies hire out heavy and light-duty equipment to the job. This filtering through the economy goes on and on and on when the Jamaicans are engaged. It permeates all levels and sectors of the economy when the Jamaicans are engaged. By contrast, foreign contractors and the Chinese contractors in particular, because they have been given special concessions, they are afforded duty and GCT exemptions. They're given 50% of the labor force on any one project. And here I often comment that whereas I can count the 50 Chinese on the job, I don't see 50 Jamaicans. So I don't know who is counting and who is monitoring. And I'll ask Jimmy to go downtown and look at the Grace Building and tell me what's happening there. Also, no, we have to state these. These are facts. We're not against people. We are for people. These are facts. They pay the Jamaican labor at approximately 60% of the stated standard industry rates. Approximately 60%. Now, when you take all of those together, the retention in the local, also, they do not pay wages here to the Chinese workers. So when we take all of those factors into consideration, if we accept that 50% of the labor force is Jamaican, and that 50% is paid at 60% of the wage rate, then let's take this. 50% of the labor cost is 12.5% of the contract sum, right, Maurice? Give or take. 60% of that is 7.5% of the contract sum. If you grant that there are some materials, even the same amount of local materials bought by the overseas contractors here, then you're up to about 17%, if that much. The retention, therefore, the point I'm making is that the retention in our economy from going to overseas contractors is very small and needs to be taken into account as far as the economy is concerned, which is why my presentation is entitled Economic Growth is Not Driven by Foreign Construction. The economic reality, as I stated before, is, in fact, I'm repeating it, but that is what it is. I have had personally experience working with the Chinese contractors, with a Chinese contractor, as you had pointed out. And we hear all kinds of stories, but we experience this ourselves. And those of you who know that I have worked on 18 hotel properties. 15 of them were greenfield properties, right? And they were all completed for the winter season that they were slated to be completed. We were practicing the same things that we saw the foreign contractors practice. We had work camps. We had work from 6 in the morning till midnight, depending on when the people felt they wanted to work, because they were paid for piecework and they were handsomely paid as well. The payrolls were quite significant at the end of the day. All construction companies develop from the surplus income earned from the contracts undertaken, and I really need to repeat that. You can only develop, firstly, if you have work. And when you have work, you have to be able to generate surplus from that work. And it is from that surplus that you're able to continue to grow and develop the company. And so, William, whether or not you go to the stock exchange or you keep feeding in back the funds that you have earned from the business, that is how you grow the business, or that is how the business has been traditionally grown here. And out of that, you acquire new equipment, you build office buildings for yourself, and improvements of that nature. And so a number of us have been able to do that over the years, and some people have grown and others have not grown. And in fact, in the recent situations both you and Cecil outlined, a number of our companies have folded. Some have gone abroad because maybe they had some foreign ownership or they were able to secure work abroad. So we have seen the local industry move from the heights of New Kingston, highways, bridges, reservoirs, power plants, large housing schemes, townhouses, and apartments, to being subcontractors to foreign firms, a point that you had raised there. Of course, this denigration of the industry has been fostered. And in the 90s, those of us who are still here and remember, I sounded this warning that if GOJ continued procurement practices that they had then, we would eventually eliminate all Jamaican firms from major infrastructure projects. We have achieved that. That is where we are now. Seriously, and it was over 20 years ago that I pointed it out. It's funny that at that joint presentation of the master builders and the UDC, the then chairman spoke after me, and instead of presenting what he had come to present, he presented a defense of the government. And he assured us then that what I was saying wasn't true. And the main point I was making is that the major spend of the government then on construction was with foreign companies. And he said that that wasn't true and that we had all kinds of work all over the place. So I went and did the research and quietly sent him the note later on. I could tell him exactly how much work the foreign companies were doing and how much less work the Jamaican companies were doing. And so we are where we are now, and we have to state the fact that the approach that we have taken has not driven economic growth. In other words, the industry that is one of the main drivers of the economic growth has not been able to do that because we have not focused on the development, growth, and sustainability of the local industry. As a result of the low economic growth, there has been high employment among that cohort that, and I really want to read all of this, that is most likely to turn to crime when unemployed. High employment among that group of people who will turn to crime because they have to eat. Some of them have 2, 3 children, 5 baby mothers and all of that. And they try to make good there. There has been little or no development in our construction skills that range from engineering, which Paul is trying to correct, to the skilled workmen, because there has been no work. And therefore, people have gone elsewhere. And I pointed out later in this that supervisors, skilled construction supervisors that I have had, I buck them up driving minibus and taxi because they have no more work in the era in which they were trained and are skilled. So we have to find ways of clearing up all of this because government, I know, with good intentions, has gone this route and have been received. and has made tremendous concessions that I find has been common practice throughout the developing world, where people have come with cheap money, or they say it's cheap money, and they have taken over the infrastructure development, in particular in the developing world. Now, if you look at all the major private sector work here in Jamaica, those have also gone out of the hands of Jamaican companies, which had built them in the past. Instead of just belly aching about the difficulties, I just want to point out that we certainly believe we can continue to do this. Myself and others have done tremendous work. I've done a lot of work with Maurice Stoppy there, our most eminent quantity surveyor. And we can say we have built the lowest and the highest throughout the country, and we can do that again. But we need a government that understands that you have to allow capacity building. We need a financing sector that has not yet fully embraced venture funding, capital venture funding, to look at that as well as the stock exchange, and thereby encourage. We need concessions, the same concessions that the foreign contractors are afforded to rebuild our equipment capacity, which has been dwindling and dwindling and dwindling because there is no work surplus or no work demand for us to build that capacity. It is no magic or mystery. Construction companies are able to finance these wonderful, tremendously capable pieces of equipment because they have the contracts to enable it, and hence the income from those contracts to enable it. So we're asking that all these corrections be made so that we can rebuild this industry, which is critical to the development of our people. I didn't want to detain you much longer, but I keep making a statement that colleagues have said is now my mantra. We cannot develop a country, Jamaica, without developing the people, Jamaicans. And we can't do that without funding, and we can't do that unemployed. So there's more to be said later on. Hopefully you will think that I haven't gone off the bend, and I may be able to answer a few more of your questions. Thank you very much for listening. Let me move my mess for you. Yeah, man.
Colleagues, good evening, everyone. Good evening. I don't know how many of you were at the last forum, but I was standing here at this podium as well. I think Jimmy has some kind of plan to merge business and engineering, and maybe we'll have a course called the Engineering of Business or the Business of Engineering. But one way or the other, we're getting there. We actually share, my students have to do a class over here in new ventures and entrepreneurship, and we share other aspects of the program with School of Business. Now, colleagues, when I was asked to participate in discussion in this topic, I thought about what is it I would come and say, and then I look at the distinguished panel, and I realize I don't need to come and talk about underground construction because that will be well taken care of. So I'll stick to what I probably know best. As Jimmy told you, I'm a trained electrical engineer. I don't know much about civil engineering from the practice side. I do know a lot from the theory and the curriculum development side, so I talk to that. So one of the things that we must ensure is that in the construction industry, there are a set of professions, a set of expertise that's required. And I've listed some of them here. We have skilled workers, and those range from masons, carpenters, steel benders, right around. And you all seen them, and those are some of the people that my colleague Carvel mentioned that are currently driving taxis and so forth of a job because there's no more industry to support them. You have the machine operators, the crane guys, the bulldozers, excavators, truck drivers. And then we go to project managers, contract managers, construction management, surveyors, quantity surveyors, very, very critical. Later on, I will break down once we have a project, and this I know for sure because I've been involved with many of those projects on this campus in the short time I've returned. And of course, the engineers in many aspects and the architect. So let's look at the skilled laborer. How are they trained? How do we normally find a skilled person? When I was a little boy growing up, you have one of two things. If they say you're bright, you go through, you pass a common entrance, you go to high school, you go to an academic program, and you do your, in those days, O-levels and A-levels. If they say you're not so bright, or your head tough, you go learn a trade. And that was the reality of the time. And nowadays, we kind of move away from the learn a trade because now everybody do GSAT, and you will go to one form of high school or another. Now, whether the secondary school transition into high school are really high schools, then that's another story. But it's called high school. So you go and learn a trade. But nowadays, I think I've seen a document through JSIF where in 2005, the government of the day was saying that we need to certify our skilled workers. And there was a massive movement for HART NTA to put in all kinds of certification. And that has been extremely successful. And these are some of the certification that HART offers in the building industry, steel, and now, I remember, Jimmy, when we had the symposium for the logistics hub, there was a big thing about dredging. You do not have people who are trained to do dredging. We do not have people who are trained for tugboat. We do not have that kind of thing. And HART was approached that they should start put these things in. And I see CMI piggyback on some of that, and they are moving. Well, CMU now, my colleague Fritz Pinnock would chastise me if I didn't mention this, that they are moving in this direction as well. University of Technology, you pull this from their web page, their construction department and their faculty of engineering. They have a slew of programs there. And most of those have been around from CAS days. And those my age and older know a lot about CAS. And they have been there, and they have been very successful in offering those. University of the West Indies have the more traditional engineering programs. Back in the days, well, since 1960, you'd have to go to St. Augustine. Most of my trained engineer colleagues here, my age or older, would have done that, the BSc in engineering at the St. Augustine campus if they have done it within university in the Caribbean. And recently, in 2013, when I came back from the US in 2006, and one of my mandates was to start some way of developing science and engineering. So as you see where we are now, we have the School of Engineering, and my campus senior colleagues are on my back to turn it into a faculty of engineering by next year this time. It should have been by now, but it has been delayed. So next year this time, you'll be hearing about the faculty of engineering at Mona campus, offering maybe the same programs and much more. But these are the programs that the engineering faculty offers, and these are the training that's currently available. Now, are they adequate? Do they supply the needs? And my colleagues are here, and distinguished guests, I want you to ask the question. I want you to make suggestions. Look at what's there. Whatever you know it's needed, if it's missing, let us know. I may represent UWI, but I work closely with Noel Brown, who is the head of School of Engineering at UTEC. He's also the chair of PERB, Professional Engineer Registration Board. I work close with JIE body. I work close with CMI. I work close with the key stakeholders of training. We discuss these things, and our goal is to build capacity. We need to know where the capacity is lacking. You out there in the field, you need to tell us what's needed, and we will respond by providing and creating those programs. And we'll talk some more about how we do that. But some of the gaps, access to training. Now, access to training comes in two forms. One, the traditional academic qualification where you have your CXC, your O-level, or CAPE, whatever it is, to get into the traditional engineering programs. Or you need to have, I think it used to be 3 or 4, now I think it's 3, at least 3 CSECs to get into HART. And the other side of it is you have to have the finances to get in. So that's a gap. The scope, I do not know if all the training that we have there is sufficient to cover what the requirements, so we can discuss that later on. Certifications. Now, I'll just tell you a story about certifications. Here, it's now that heart of these programs, you go through these and you get certified. I've lived in the US for 9 years. And you know everything I realize and admire about them? Doesn't matter where you come from, with what you come with, there's always a pathway to get the education that you need. There's always a pathway to be trained on something. I'll give you an example. I was here before I went to the US in 1997. So in between 93 and 96, I was an NMR engineer in chemistry department. A colleague of mine, Rod Ricketts, electrician, and we used to do all kind of stuff. We fix the generators, we connect the phase detectors, we do all of that. Rod Ricketts migrated to the US shortly after me, and he came up and he wanted to work. He didn't have a piece of paper, not even a high school diploma, but he learned the trade here by going to a site and someone teaching him. Rod Ricketts wanted to work on a construction site. And you know what we did? We were able to went online, read a document, answer some questions in an examination, and a card was mailed to him 1 week from that time, and he took it to a construction site and he got a job. He got a job. Now, if he tried to walk on the site, they will throw him out, obviously. But that little piece of document is at least an initial certification to say you have some kind of competence, or at least you would have read this document. Do we have that here? No. Industry readiness. One of the biggest complaints of our from industry used to be, notice the word used to be, our graduates are not industry ready. They don't know anything. All they know is theory, and they come on the ground and they can't do anything. Now we have been changing that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Registered professional engineers, I alluded to that. And if Noel was here, he would preach all night about this. We need to have our engineers registered as professional engineers and follow the designing standards of what we call the building codes. That's the Bible for construction. But we're closing the gaps, and this is what we're doing. Here at UA, that thing about access. It took me a while, 2 years actually, to conceptualize and write this down as a 7-page proposal document. And then took me another year to get it approved through the UA rigorous approval process. To start and offer, I'm starting this September. There are about 15 students signed up for it already, and I have continuous discussion with parents because nobody knows what this thing is. What I call a preliminary engineering year. It qualifies the candidate to, if they do that course of work in 1 year, get the necessary passes, necessary GPA, they move into the 3-year engineering program quite seamlessly. What this does, it opens access. Anybody from anywhere, as long as you have some maths and science from high school, you can come with SATs from the US, you could come with qualification from China, you can come with that, the requirements that they use to get into their university, you could come with that from India. You know, U is a global university. You can come with anything from anywhere, and I will accept you into engineering, prelim engineering. Your goal is to pass the courses and get into the 3-year program. Now, I couldn't call it a 4-year degree, of course, because my colleagues at St. Augustine would say, no, Paul, that can't work. Because one UE concept would mean that they would have to change theirs to 4-year, and that's not going to happen. So it's a preliminary program separate from the 3-year program, but it qualifies them for the 3-year program. And I could do mix and match. So it makes it extremely flexible for our students to come in. Financing. I've been canvassing student loans since I came back. Our engineering cost is a little higher than the normal. We are 10,000 US, quite small compared to the US cost, but more than what the traditional US students pay. So I want them to have access to full loan. Student loan wouldn't hear it in the first time I went to them. So our student would get the same 250,000 Jamaican. Then I got it raised to 390, then 430, then 500,000. And this year, we had a serious campaign. I spoke to a few guys on the board, and we tried to get it going. And we were trying for $1 million, but we got $750,000 for engineering. That engineer will have access to that this year. Not only that, we have been doing this, myself and Fritz Pinochet, my partner, we have been canvassing this for a while. We have been talking to the governments about even increase that access to funding and also reducing the interest rate, making it favorable for students to want to do engineering. So much so the government have reduced the interest rate for student loan from 9.5% to 6% for engineering and, of course, logistics, because Fritz have to get part of it as well, logistics and maritime. And starting this year, even the parent loan will be reduced to 6% interest rate. Thirdly, the Dr. the Honorable Minister Chang, I'm on a task force, and Thursday I'll be meeting with Professor Gordon Shirley, who's chairing that subcommittee. There will be a special funding through the HOPE Fund that students doing engineering will be able to access to cover the rest of the loan. And it will initially be as a loan, and upon graduation, if they move into the required, whether logistics sub or BPO sectors, as the government mandate, that loan will become a grant. How are we going to do that? That's the meeting I'm going to have Thursday with Prof. Shirley. We're going to work out the logistics of that. No pun intended. But now, JSIF have been doing a wide range of intervention from the primary school end coming up and trying to put all kind of infrastructure in place. You just need to go to their website and see what's there. Now, one thing I didn't know of until, of course, I met Lieutenant Colonel Martin Rickman, well, David Cummins before him, and then Martin Rickman. They have this thing at JDF that they call the Technical Training Institute. And since its inception, they have graduated over 400 skilled and certified artisans. And these are challenged and inner city kids that they take into this. Well, JDF can do that, right? They have to worry about anything. But, and of course, in association with HART. And they have done very successful, they have been very successful, and they're expanding. So much so that the Prime Minister asked Lieutenant Colonel to chair the committee for development of more of that national development along that path, for the hope. Art has reduced. Art used to, if you go there first time to do a level, whatever level, level 1, level 2, level 3, you have a certain fee. It used to be $20,000. Art has reduced that the first timer to $5,000. And I know this because my engineering students are encouraged to do a level 3 art certification in the summer after their second year. Because I'm not just building academic competence, I'm building technical hands-on competence. So they graduate with 1 or 2 additional certification to show that they have these competencies. And that's $5,000. So at least they can start. Industry internships, that's increasing. More and more, I mean, we form a company, as Jimmy told, Monotech Engineering, so we do part of that. But our colleagues in industries, both construction, manufacturing, telecommunication, we use a psychology that says, you are going to employ these students. You don't know what you're going to get. So why not run an internship, pay them low salary, test them out, test the ground, let's see. If it works, you keep them. If it doesn't, no harm done, you let them go. And that has been working very well. Accreditation, we are doing that. Noel Brown and I, again, we are pretty much on the UCJ, University Council of Jamaica. We have just revised the accreditation document for engineering, and that's going to be deployed. I'm also involved in international accreditation. ABET will be coming here for me in October, and my colleagues in St. Augustine use UK accreditation. So our programs are not just locally accredited, but they're going to be internationally accredited. That means mobility. That means if they can't get a job here, they can get it somewhere else quite effectively and competitively. And of course, the building codes. That's been revised now. And the reason for that is, I mentioned it at the last forum, World Bank, through JSIF and the government, the World Bank is supposed to give a grant loan somewhere in the region of $45 million US for building infrastructure that's resilient to climate change and all of that, to environmental disasters. But World Bank said they are not going to do that unless we have a valid building code with a building act to enforce the code. So it has to be enforced, because otherwise it's a waste of money if there's no way of enforcing it. So we are forced to revise it, and pretty soon you'll be hearing something coming out of Cabinet about where we are with that. More closing gaps, and this is where I really need you to engage us in discussion and give me your thoughts on this. Even just yesterday, I don't see my resident architect, as I call him, Mr. Richard Rani. They're supposed to be here to back me up. They're not here. But we have been discussing civil engineering and architecture kind of goes together. The architect, it's a very thin line where the architect stops and where civil engineering starts. And sometimes it's quarrelsome because the architect figures something look nice and aesthetic and stuff, and the civil engineer said that can't work. So what we want is a way to merge them. What we want is a way to combine them. I mean, we try to combine the architect code and the engineering building code, but then that's another problem there. But I've done some research, and I look at other international universities. There's a program called architectural engineering. What that does is exactly the concept that I have in mind. It allows them to do enough civil engineering, more structural engineering side, concrete and steel and stuff, and then enough drawing architectural work to facilitate a complete, not a complete, but a very strong fundamental understanding of the architect and the engineering side of it. And out of that program is where you get your MEPs, your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Now, who are these guys? Let me just retrack a little. On this campus, we're going to start a project. Right now, we have one that my architect. I started the process, and then my engineers are involved with it. The design of the amphitheater there, we're going up a few floors. So the architect did his drawing, and he looked at it, he conceptualized, he talked to the structural engineer, look at it and said, you need this steel to support the structure. Then you have to get the geotechnical guy to come in and do a geotech analysis of the soil to see if the soil can support the weight. The building may sink. Now, if the soil cannot support the weight after the geotech analysis, you have to do something called piling. I mean, you have to dig something all the way down to the bedrock, you find something firm, and you put some structures in, and that's extremely expensive. But you have to do it, otherwise the building will go. You don't want that. So, after all of that, and the architect work, and everybody sign off and say, yes, this is what we want, all our needs, we have enough rooms, we have lecture theaters, we have enough refs room, we have all the aesthetics that we want. Then Mr. QS come in, a quantity surveyor, come and takes that, look at it, do his analysis and say the estimated budget for this is $300 million or something like that. And based on that work. Now, we have a rule of thumb that says every square foot is about $7,000 of wall, and it includes everything. So we usually use that as a rule of thumb. So when I'm building my 6-story engineering building, we already estimate 400,000 square feet, and that's about $20 million US, $25 million US. And maybe I have to do it to the stock market to see what I can get. But that's there. And those are some things that are needed. Now, are we training people for that? Do we train people? We have no course that's called MEP engineering. But you can have an MEP firm that have a mechanical, electrical, various plumbing, and you combine all of that. It's pretty much what we teach in first year civil engineers called building services. You have to get all of that. So from an educator, trainer side, and with one foot in industry, one foot in academia, the bigger foot, well, it keeps varying. But we have to continuously assess what is needed and try to ensure that we create a trained workforce to meet all the needs. So, manufacturing engineering. We have mechanical and manufacturing, but do we have enough? Do we have enough manufacturing? As I was discussing earlier, mining and geological engineering is something that we have in my thought process as well. And my thoughts usually have a way of manifest after time, so we'll see what happens. So with that, current status. This is the last slide. And these are facts. The demand for engineer and skilled workers are extremely high. Don't worry about the lack of jobs. The demand are still high. Government of Jamaica, same Minister Chang, look at me sitting at the table. UTEC was there, CMI was there. He wasn't looking at them, he's looking at me. And said, we need to have at least 1,000 engineers graduating per year. And he draws the comparison. He says Singapore has just little over 3 million in population, and they graduate 8,000 engineers per year. Costa Rica graduate 4,000. And I have a document that shows the correlation between engineers and economic growth, and it's a very positive correlation. We finally have data on that. I can email it to you. Out of UK. Shows that they said Mexico since 2012, tripled the number of engineer graduates. They are now at 71,000. And they are growing. You know, wonder why Ford building a manufacturing plant there until Trump come and cause them to come back. But what I'm saying is the need for engineers, and the government now is saying that they need engineers. Now, to me, it's little risk. We don't see the jobs right now, but this is what has been happening. Industries have been coming here to set up plants for a long time, from I was a student. And they look around for the workforce, and they do not see enough engineers. They do not see enough technical workforce. So they go somewhere else. They go Mexico and they go Costa Rica. Now, it's a chicken and egg case because we may have all of these engineers and they don't come. But to me, because I'm ensuring that they have ABET international accreditation, if the jobs are not here, I have no qualms about sending them somewhere else. You have the remittance, right? That will come back. So that will be there. The Global Logistics Hub, when we had that symposium, Jimmy, a couple years ago, I remember the keynote speaker was the president of Walmart. He put up that list, I never forget it. The number one demand, they showed the top 10 job demand for the Global Logistics Hub. And the number one demand, skilled workers. There's a shortage, the US is experiencing some shortage with that right now. Skilled workers. The mason, the carpenter, the HVAC technician, those guys who do those things, they are in great demand. Engineers were number 3 on that list, and tanker drivers were number 9. Ladies and gentlemen, we as training institution, and I'm not just speaking for you and myself, I'm speaking for my colleagues at UTech, at CMI, and elsewhere in ART, we are responding to the training needs, but we need to identify them. We need to see if it's sustainable, we put in a sustainable program. If it's a one-off thing, we invite somebody down and have a certificate or a diploma course or a one-off master's and do a one-time training. But we need to identify, and we need your help in helping us to identify these needs. Thank you.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Sinopharm. It's a Chinese company, and no, we're not all bad. We have been doing good things. Sinopharm its actual name is Sinopharm, China Sinopharm. Its local name is Sinopharm Pan-Caribbean. Now in China, Sinopharm is the largest pharmaceutical company. It is the company that has the most comprehensive line of pharmaceuticals in China. And it currently staffs just under 100,000 persons. The company has 11 other companies that it wholly owns and other companies that are listed on the stock exchange. The company's revenues annually is just over $43 billion, and it is the only Chinese company that is listed in the Fortune 500 list of companies. There are currently 199. Now, for Sinopharm to do its business, it does it through international pharmaceuticals and medical healthcare industry. Now, the pharmaceutical side has an import side of it and also has an export side of it. On the import side, it does medical products, anything that accentuates whatever it's doing in China currently, and it has bonded logistics. The export side has project development, which is what they're doing here in Jamaica, medical products, medical assistance, corporation, and construction networking. The medical and healthcare side of it sees medical treatment being done and also in the healthcare industry. Now, for Sinopharm to do all this, they do it through planning, through their construction arm of their company, through equipment supply, installation and maintenance, and operational management. Now, that will come in later on as we talk a little bit more about the knowledge that Sinopharm has, its skills and its abilities. For Sinopharm to do its work here and throughout the world, they use the advantages that they have. For example, in currency of projects, in financing of projects, in foreign aided projects, and also in projects that they will invest in. Now, these are the 4 models that China Sinopharm currently uses. The currency project that I spoke just now about will see Sinopharm doing work for its employer. Now, in this model that Sinopharm uses to get its work done, the employer pays the whole bill. Sinopharm will work as a contractor to cover everything. They will do that because the employer sees that they have the necessary skills to implement the project that they want implemented. So Sinopharm will bring to bear all the advantages that it has as it relates to its size, as it relates to all its knowledge that it has learned from the business that it currently is in. The second model that Sinopharm uses is its financing model. Now, Sinopharm will finance projects through concessional loans, through preferential buyer's credit, through loans from the policies of the Chinese government. The Chinese government will make concessionary loans to Sinopharm. They can access it, and they will do it also through export buyer's credit and seller's credit. These models, have they worked? Well, they have worked because they've been able to do projects all over the world. For example, Sinopharm was able to complete a project in Ecuador where they worked with the Ecuadorian government to do 120 hospitals, or work on 120 hospitals there. The hospitals that they worked on were spread across 23 provinces. It included 39 products, such as for imagery, radiology, and anesthesia. They did it, and like Mr. Stewart would say, like he said earlier, for local companies, they did it on time and it was on the budget as well, too. The corporation mode, or the corporation side of financing that Sinopharm will use, is through grants that are given by the Chinese government. And Chinese government will give grants to different countries, and we are currently the beneficiary of one such grant because Sinopharm currently is working closely with the government to see what we can do with that grant because we know it has been granted. Another financial model that Sinopharm uses is that of source financing, where Sinopharm International will work with the investor, or they will work with whomever wants to do a project. For example, well, let's take what's happening here. Currently, the model that we're using is to speak to an investor to say, you have a building, the building you want to put up, here's what we'll do. We'll lend you 85% of the construction cost. You foot the other 15% of it. And after the project, all the revenue that you will get, we will share some of it. You look at your finances and tell us how much of it you can pay. So what we'll do is we'll lend you 85%, or we'll lend you 80%, or we'll lend you 70% of it. The rest of it, we ask that you pony up and put into the project. But generally, if you take, the bigger the project, the better. Because China Sinopharm is able to access monies, whether it is in China or on the international market, but they're able to access funds that are low in interest charges. It's able also to use its own finances to put into projects. Hence the reason why China Sinopharm can come to Jamaica and invest in projects, because it's investing also its own money. It's putting some skin in the game, so to speak.
Has the model worked? Yes, because they've used it in several other countries, one such as in Vietnam, where they were able to build hospitals that have the capacity to serve over 100 million. China Sinopharm is a qualified and experienced company. China Sinopharm has not only done projects in Europe and in Asia, but they've also done projects on mainland China. They've been able to do projects that are 31 stories high. They've been able to do projects investing their own money. Currently, the company is doing 5 hospitals in China, and they've invested 470 million of their own money to get this project done. Now, the company is currently in Jamaica doing construction, hence the reason why I'm standing here. The company, unlike most of what you spoke to Mr. Stewart, we pay GIC rates. I saw to that. So GIC rates are paid. The union approached us, and they told me it was quite unusual for me to open the doors and sit down with them and say, let's talk. So there was no fight. I sat down with them, so we have a cordial relation with the two unions who are on site. In fact, Mr. Alton Brown said he wished other companies were behaving the way we were behaving. Let's hit a little bit of what Sinopharm is doing in Jamaica as it relates to healthcare. And primarily, Sinopharm is a healthcare company. As I spoke to earlier, the company currently runs 8 hospitals in China and has 2 more that is affiliated. It means that its reach and experience in the hospital industry is wide-ranging. In Jamaica, we're currently doing Grace Kennedy's head office. By extension, what we've done is to try to show Jamaica that we can do construction and we can do it well, but not only can we do it well, we can do it in accordance to what laws of the island is saying, and also to show the experience that China Sinopharm has garnered from building hospitals throughout the world. Now, not only does it build hospitals, as I said, it manages and runs them. Hence, we're interested in anything that begins with the name H, which means that all the hospitals that are on the island that needs upgrading from B to A or C to B, we're interested. All the clinics that are around that need upgrading, we're interested. And we've also made proposals for some things that are not yet public, and we'll hold our tongue on it until it comes to fruition. So, to wrap up, we're aware that there is a little bit of a negative stigma, but there are some of us who are doing what is right. I just spoke to what we're doing with regards to salaries. I just spoke to you about what we've done with the unions. We've also sat down and made sure that there is absolutely no worker who comes on the site without proper PPEs. They have proper gears coming on the site. We make sure that the same break that the Chinese take, the locals take it as well. And you can go down, Mr. Stewart, and count. Oh, what happens on this site is there are and credit to our employer. They've said no more than 30 Chinese. So I can tell you categorically now that there are 13 Chinese to 48 locals working right now. And the count is kept and checked every day. So while we're aware of some of the negative connotations, China Sinopharm is doing its part in building. One of the things we've sought to do is the work that is done, for example, right now in concreting and formworking and reinforcement, there is a supervisor, but the training is passed to everybody who's local. It's passed on to them. I was on another site, and in fact, I see the engineer here, and he said, hey, you guys ever see the work those guys are doing? The steelwork is bossy. Yeah, I can boast that. That site also has some bossy steelwork, but it's also being done by local workers under guidance. So Sinopharm is aware that to do its work, the technical capabilities of the local labor must be built. We're aware of the political issues, the minefield we have to walk. But we've been doing it, and we've been doing it well so far, and we hope to continue, and we hope to continue to build our relationship with our fellow Jamaicans as we work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stimulating. Before we get to question and answer, while you're formulating your questions, I had omitted something by error. And the main sponsor of tonight's event and person who made it possible for us to join in this continuation of a very vibrant discussion is Mr. Gary Walters, Chairman of the CIC. So, Gary, my apologies to you for not bringing you up earlier, but I think this is the right time now for you to say something. You put up some good money. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I was initially to bring greetings, but I will divert. We're going into questioning, and it might be best. But just to give you a little background, the Construction Industry Council is the umbrella organization for the building and construction sector. It provides a single voice for the professional associations within the industry. The council was formed in 1960 as the Joint Consultative Committee for the Building and Construction Industry, and the membership consists of these professional associations: the Association of Land Evaluation Surveyors, the Jamaica Institute of Architects, the Jamaica Institution of Engineers, the Jamaica Institute of Quantity Surveyors, the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica, and the Jamaica Institution of Planners, and the Land Surveyors Association of Jamaica. Now, we heard presentations from Carvel, from the Master Builders, and he gave us a lot of what is happening in the construction sector. Something he didn't say, but was brought to the fore at the breakfast forum by Donald Mullings. Some of you may or may not be aware that some of our large construction firms that have been around for probably over 30 years have actually closed doors. I can think of two readily. Tankwell, well, they've closed the construction arm. They're no longer involved with construction. And Care Construction, which was formerly Caribbean Construction, they've also closed down. But there are also some consulting engineering firms that have long since closed their doors. The Howard Humphreys, the Earl and Associates, the Fisher Price. And I'm telling you, a lot of the firms, you see their names like, I won't call the names, and associates. But when you check it out, it's one person. And the quantity surveyors and the land surveyors. Now, it was interesting that Carvel said that, 20 years ago, you predicted this. But I think now we've reached a point where we have to take stock as a country, as a nation. I encourage the University of the West Indies to continue to produce engineers and other technical and qualified persons. And as Mr. Aiken pointed out, the jobs may not be here now, but it's the intention of the Construction Industry Council for the jobs to become available and to continue to grow. Now, one of the ways we can do this is to bring to light, to challenge the government. And one of the things that those in the construction and consulting, they've said to me, they said, Gary, when you pick up these documents today, they say you must have been involved with the construction of 3 airports. But how many airports how many we have? So, sometimes we have to look at the requirements and create an environment where locals can participate. Yes, you want the best, but don't make it so onerous. Similarly for your consulting opportunities. So bear in mind of the way the industry is, and let us facilitate it. And one of the things that Mr. Mullings also mentioned is that he said at the forum that they don't want any handouts. No, they don't. They want to compete. And I think I can speak for all in the construction industry that fair competition is what it is all about. And, the GMA speaks about buying Jamaican. And there are times when government put regulations to protect particular industry. Agriculture is protected, right? The amount you can import. And similarly, it may be time for us to look at some form of protection for the industry. Similarly, to ensure that it's vibrant, because as you go forward, and as I was reading an article that a lot of the traditional jobs won't be there, but the demand for skilled workers will increase. And when you have all of these robotics and these roads where the cars drive themselves, God forbid, we will need these type of skilled persons to keep the driverless cars going and the robotics going. So as we go into the question and answer, this is the only part that we were disappointed in at the Breakfast Forum. We didn't get a chance to, and we hope we'll have a vibrant one. And as the chairperson said, you'll give your name, you speak up, and we can speak freely. And we hope we have a good session. Thank you.
What way you think that you could encourage our local engineers, civil engineers and construction companies to really sit and partner with the government so that these projects that are coming on board from Factories Corporation of Jamaica and others can be possible, that you could be a part of it? My question, for the downtown project, the ratio that you mentioned of local to Chinese workers that was stipulated as part of the contract for that particular project. Now, for the other projects that you're doing, what is China Sinopharm, or what is China Sinopharm planning to do to foster, to encourage more contribution to the growth of the economy? That's it.
Thank you. The first question was about what the country
To be assertive.
to be assertive.
To get the project.
Oh, now one of the things that we think need to happen for the major projects is collaboration within the industry. We actively, and you've heard Don Mullins' name called, we actively try to bring our companies together to address major projects. So we think that once we can convince colleagues to come out of the one-man approach to life and join up, then we will be able to address larger projects and invite greater participation. And in fact, George Gordon is here, another colleague, and we are supposed to be joined in on another project. We're waiting on the development to take place. It's a fairly large project. But that is the approach I think that we have to bring to the table, because there are a lot of resources available in individual entities that if you bring them all together. When I mentioned earlier that we had worked on a large number of hotel projects, how that came about, it was a joining of 2 previous smaller companies that was able to bring that together, bring all the engineering skills. At one time, we were the largest engineering company in the country. We had about 8 engineers, no other company had that, working on our project. So collaboration, I think, is the answer.
Thank you. Dave, over to you. What's the projection for the future?
Well, we're only just doing one project currently. We hope to do others. Sinopharm has proposals out. or we only have one live project currently. Will we maintain the ratio, which I think was the question, with...
The question was, we understand the ratio situation in this project, which was what the client requested. Now, what will you be doing, since that's the client's request? What will you be adopting that for all subsequent projects, or do you have other plans in place to still encourage, you know?
Pretty much we intend to use more local labor than Chinese, and particularly because we found that this model works. It works for us. We don't intend to vary it too much.
Is there any policy we can evoke, given we want to assume the status of developed country in the near future, 2030 here? Is there any policy we can put together wherein, in order for foreign companies, well, for two-pronged approach. One, in order for the government itself to procure the service of foreign companies to come to Jamaica, with the government and private sector to come to Jamaica, right, and undertake projects here, we have to first make sure that there are no companies in Jamaica who can effectively undertake and execute these projects equally or better. Number two, in the event that the usual handshakes happen and these foreign companies do come in, is there any policy we can recommend or put in place that for them to employ anyone, right, in terms of from the top down, because we are not all just laborers in Jamaica, right? From top down, from project managers to engineers to quantity surveyors, they have to be advertised and checked to make sure that there's no one in Jamaica who can adequately fill that capacity before they employ someone from, say, China, France, or Spain, Mexico, and so on. Please, anyone who cares to address, I'll be more than happy to listen.
No.
Thank you for the question. I have posited to a number of government ministers that we should insist, or we should enact, that any company coming to do construction business in Jamaica should associate with a Jamaican company, a fulsome association, some form of legal joint venture. This will ensure that this often repeated transfer of technology actually happens. The way it's done now, there is no transfer at all. The technology comes and it goes, and nothing is retained in the main. There's another issue that I have raised also. In the policy that it is really the government that allowed it, that there's 50% labor imported into the country. Nowhere in there did they allow for 50% in the engineering staff and the construction management staff. So it sounds as if we're getting some improvement there, and hopefully that message will resonate. But I started from a position that no foreign company should be allowed to bid and compete against locals on private sector projects that are not of a type and complexity that is incapable of being undertaken here. Of course, that was thrown out the window.
You see, in terms of current technology, we have at our fingertips. It is possible for a local company to procure the services of subcontractors wherever they choose in the world, as well as material. Right? Now, given
Very
that
good
is
point.
it is not necessary,
Very
as
good
far
point.
as I see it. The international companies come here. The majority of the technical subcontractors they take here are from overseas as well, right? While they refer to some for labor work, and so they'll take on some Jamaican subcontractors. No, there is nothing to prevent a Jamaican contractor from doing the same.
Yeah. In fact, many years ago, and I really have always to recognize Maurice Tuppy, our most eminent quant surveyor, and a mentor to us all in the industry. But Maurice, you will recall when we had the NDA, National Development Agency, we tried to do exactly that. So when, for instance, we sent out requests for interest for consultancy on a specialized project, for instance, the cement company was one, we insisted that a Jamaican company be partnered with, and that the scope and content of the Jamaican company's work be fully elaborated in the proposal for analysis, because it is only by doing that that we would have retained some of the cement manufacturing technology that wasn't available among our engineering pool there at the time. Well, I won't tell you what else happened with that. We failed, but we did try. And so the other point you made, we also pushed that the jobs be granted to the local entities. We achieved some of that in a project that was called the Rural Education Project, financed by the Americans, where we insisted that the Jamaican architect employ the American architect. That was politics, by the way, and only for a brief project on the project, brief portion on the project. But we should do these things if we're looking at the development of our people, and again, in order to develop our country. But we're failing in a number of areas there. However, we keep trying, and I hear that I'm about to have a good partner here, who I will be pursuing in partnership to make sure we break down the proportions and get more Jamaicans working on those projects.
I'm in full agreement with my colleague here, and I must say those are very pointed questions and observations. Now, from my observation, why it is, and it seemed that way from what I've observed since I came back, is pretty much where the funding is. When you bring in an overseas contractor or company to come in and do this, and they are funding the project, whether through PPP or whatever means, they dictate the terms. Now, it is commendable that China at least allows some flexibility.
Sinopharm.
Totally different. Sinopharm. Major difference, my apologies. Allows some flexibility in terms of adopting some of Grace Kennedy's requests. But from what I've seen, some of this stuff most of the PPPs on campus and stuff, my colleagues have to fight to get some of the local representatives because they are the ones funding it. Now, the government will need to put policies in place, as you said, that say, if you're going to come here and do this, then these are the things that you must follow. And we are in agreement. It's just, what do we do now? The discussion should be, how do we get this enforced? I mean, we like to find problems now, but we as engineers, we are problem solvers. How do we find a way to get this fixed and convince the government that this is the way to go? And we can have that discussion. I can speak explicitly to what we are doing here. I just spoke to you illegal because we have a MOU that NAA already vet, their legal team has vetted it, and our guys are doing it. We are signing that for partnership, not just in internship, but we are going to assist with a lot of the research component. And I can tell you one, that's a spin-off from our final engineering project. We have visual and navigation aid for the visual impaired. They walk around, their phone speak to them, guide them, overlap with GPS data. And we want to put a stoplight on the ring road, and we already got the stoplight from NWA. We modified it so that it could interface with the phone via Bluetooth, and the visual impaired would walk up to the stoplight, give a voice command, and the light will turn red and allow them to cross, and they go where they're going. These are collaborations we are doing with the industry. NROC just emailed me today that they already started the drilling. There's a bypass that's going from Montego Bay, And they start the drilling, and our geotech guys are welcome to come down and observe and be part of the process. So yes, we need more. Yes, we do. And we are continuously pushing. And I know UTech is doing a lot of that. And I know, well, most of what CMI does is on the scene. So okay, they are set, but they are expanding. And we are all trying to build capacity and grow this country.
I want to thank everybody here, but before we leave and have some refreshment, I'd like to highlight our sponsors and say thanks to them. It wouldn't have happened without them. Construction Industry Council, thank you so much. And please, let's recognize our sponsors. Allied Insurance Brokers, GK General Insurance. I guess we can call this a partnership that has put together this forum for us this evening. I want to thank our panelists, Doctors Lawrence and White. Thank you. Mr. Carville and Ms. Henlin, could you join us, please? I have only gentlemen on the panel this time. I don't know if the construction industry has been promoting gender equity, but at least, gentlemen, we're not going to disappoint you by having the presentation done by other than our Director of Marketing, Ms. Janice Henlin. So, Janice, could you present to Dr. Nicholson? Sorry, Dr. William Lawrence and Dr. Seth White for their excellent conjoint presentation. Thank you. The other grey-beard man here, Mr. Carville Stewart. Aye. This is why we get greybeards. Dr. Aiken, Paul, otherwise known on this campus as Pablo.
I'm going to have to get a container for these things.
Yes, but if you continue partnering with MSBM, we'll have a lot of forum. And Mr. Dave Hilton and Mr. Joseph Fan. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this again to thank our sponsors, to remind you that we have light refreshments outside. We want to thank everyone here for being with us this evening, and we invite you, I guess we have everybody's contact information who was signed in, so we will advise you in due course. We'll be soon having other fora that will interest you. It's the business of the Mona School of MSBM, Mona School of Business and Management, to put on these topical presentations so that we can stimulate some national discussion moving towards growth. I want to thank you all for being here, wish you a pleasant evening, safe travel home, and invite you to join us for some light refreshment. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to say thanks to the people who put it on. Planning Committee, Mona School of Business and Management, Marketing Team, and PSU, Professional Services Unit. Thank you.